Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm currently pre-recording a little bit for my trip in June, and so I can already say happy Pride Month, even though I'm recording this in May still. But today I want to share with you my newest favorite books with queer representation. This is going through different genres. We're going to talk about some fantasy, some horror, some literary fiction, historical fiction, some non-fiction as well. So I hope this will be interesting. I hope there will be a book that you decide to pick up. Now, I do have to say that I have a ton of books to mention. This is all kind of the new favorite books I had in the last year, and I even have previous editions of this video. If you want to go further back, you can get even more recommendations, and I will link those down below if you want. So let's talk about my new favorite books with queer rep. However, I will try to keep it very short. So we do have 15 fantasy books to talk about. I have sorted them a little bit, and we're starting out with standalones. The first one is a novella, and that is The Knight and the Butcherbird by Alix E. Harrow. This is a post-apocalyptic story. However, we are following in this world a woman who is in love with another woman. They're kind of like these demons, monsters kind of thing, and it's the question of like, where do they come from? And in the end, the story is very much about the question of how much do we change for our love. Then we have The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. Now, this wasn't technically a favorite book. I would have loved this one as a novella, but I felt it dragged a little bit as a novel. In this one, we are following 3 female characters in a city under siege. We have a witch, we have a knight, and we have kind of an outcast noblewoman, and these 3 might be the only ones who can save the kind of keep from these weird saints that show up. Then we're getting into the vampire territory with Lucy Undying. This is kind of a Dracula retelling where we follow Lucy, who is the woman who gets killed by Dracula in the original story. However, in this one, she does have a vampiric life, and we're following that one, and this is very sapphic. Then we have A Dowry of Blood, another Dracula retelling where we are following one of Dracula's brides as she is kind of writing a letter to him about their life together. This is about abuse in a relationship, and also this has some poly elements to it. Last but not least, we have Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. This one, again, wasn't a new favorite for me. It was just a little bit too long and dragged out. However, we are following 3 women in 3 different times as they make their acquaintance with vampires. And this one definitely had elements that I thought were interesting. This is again very much about abusive relationship and kind of toxic lesbians. So if you enjoy that, check out the book. Switching gears a little bit to another novella, and that is The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water. I don't want to say too much about this one. This feels very much like Asian folklore, similar to the Singing Hills cycle by Niveau. We are following a person who works in kind of a restaurant when a band of bandits shows up, and they have to travel and work together for a goal. And meanwhile, they're kind of uncovering each other's secrets. Last but not least, for the standalones, we have The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. This was my favorite read of last year, and if you just pick up one book from all of this, I would say choose this one. This is a male-male kind of romance. I wouldn't call this like a fantasy romance book or something like that, but it does have this undercurrent of a love story in this very epic fantasy tale where 2 warriors have to carry the corpse of a goddess through a falling empire. And the love story in this is so perfect because of the way both of these characters don't think they deserve each other's love. Next up, we're going into a couple of fantasy series that are finished, and the first one is the Raybearer duology. In this one, we do have a very prominent side character that is asexual, and this is discussed throughout both of the books. In this one, we follow a girl who has to become part of this palace as kind of an advisor to the person who is going to be the next emperor or something like that. And she has some family secrets and is secretly sent there to kill that future emperor. Then we have the Bone Witch. This one has more queer side characters, and I really loved this trilogy so much. It is technically YA, but I think it has a very wide appeal, and it gets quite dark as well. In this one, we follow a girl who learns that she is a Bone Witch when she accidentally brings back her brother from the dead during his funeral. And then she gets introduced to this magical world and she starts to unravel the magic secrets. Next up, we have one series that is finished, but I haven't finished it yet, but I still wanted to bring it up, and that is the Rainwild Chronicles by Robin Hobb, because I was pleasantly surprised that this one does have quite a few gay characters. Those are side characters, but I think it's still an important part of the story, and especially one of those characters, Cedric, gets more important in the second book of the series. I've been having a lot of fun with this. We are following a bunch of people, most of them teenagers, who are tasked with ferrying these dragons to find a lost city. Now, I would totally recommend reading The Realm of the Elderlings in order, like start with Farseer. I think the queer themes take a little bit longer to really be visible in the series, but they're kind of there from the start. Next up, we have some series that I have mentioned before, but that I have now finished, and I just wanted to quickly mention again. The first one is the Rook and Rose trilogy by M.A. Carrick. This is an absolutely fantastic trilogy that you just need to read, and it is also very queer, especially with one of the characters, Vargo, who is such a chaotic bisexual, and I love him for it. This series where we mainly follow Ren, who is kind of a master thief, and she has this whole plot to infiltrate a noble family and steal their wealth. However, she doesn't know that this noble family actually isn't wealthy anymore, and then she gets sucked into all of the things. This gets so much bigger than the original premise, and it's just so good. Next up, I have finally read Faithbreaker, and with that finished the kind of Godkiller trilogy. This one is great for kind of queer representation. We have a lot of characters who are like bisexual or gay and stuff like that, but we also have a lot of disability representation, and I really loved both of those things for this series. I wasn't the biggest fan of kind of the direction of the final book, but I still enjoyed this series overall. In the first book, we follow a god killer who is a woman going around killing gods because gods are forbidden in this world, and she's trying to kill them off before they get too powerful because there had been a terrible war where the gods killed a ton of people. Then I also read Anyway the Wind Blows, which is the final book in the Simon Snow trilogy, which was super fun. This is also a very gay book, as we basically in the first book have a bit of a Harry Potter parody, but we basically have the character that is inspired by Harry and the character that is inspired by Draco be roommates, and maybe a little bit more than that. After that first book, it really does its own thing with the characters and the storyline, so it goes away from kind of that premise of parody and becomes its own story as well. So basically this is about magic, the world of mages, it's about queerness, it's about not fitting in because maybe you are not quite human, stuff like that, and I had a lot of fun with that series, even though I would say the first book is still my favorite. And then we have The God of Lost Words, which is the finale to the Library of the Unwritten. This again is a very interesting premise because we follow a woman who is the librarian in hell, and her section of the library is all about unwritten books. Those unwritten books can come to life and can escape the library, which is exactly what happens at the beginning of the first book. And we just see the journey of these characters trying to get the book back, but maybe getting sucked into even more of an adventure. on the way. And last but not least, I have a series that is currently ongoing, but that I need to mention because I love it so much, and that is the Monstress comic series. I currently have volume 10 on my TBR, and last year I read volume 9, and it's just so good. There is basically so much sapphic love in this comic series, a lot of women in power, and it's just very dark, very gritty fantasy series where we follow a character called Micah Halfwolf. It's a time where we have a war between humans and organics, but we also have this underlying mystery of these old gods, and one of the old gods actually lives in Micah, and yeah, there's just so much going on, but I love it. I eat it up. Okay, we are halfway through. Now we have 14 recommendations that are not fantasy, and we're starting out with literary and historical fiction. The first book is one that I have just recently finished, and that is Emperor of Gladness. This is a story where we follow a boy whose family came from Vietnam and now they live in the US, and he's around like, I don't know, 16, 17, something like that, when he tries to take his own life by jumping off a bridge. However, there is an old Lithuanian woman who stops him, and he kind of moves in with her, and they start to have this very interesting friendship dynamic. This is a very hard read, but I felt like it had a lot of hope and I enjoyed it a whole lot. Then we have Giovanni's Room, which is more of a classic, but I just threw it in here as well. This is a gay classic where we follow this white man from the US as he lives in France. He does have a fiancée. However, when she's traveling Spain, he starts having an affair with an Italian man still in Paris. And it's kind of about like this affair and their feelings for each other, and how this white gay man is so careless. Next up, we have The Death of Vivek OG. This is a book written by one of my favorite authors, Akwaeke Emezi. And in this one, we follow a person called Vivek OG, and I think they live in Nigeria, and it is about their gender expression and how that is not accepted by the family and kind of like the wider like social circle, and how this person is struggling with that. We mostly see this from the perspective of people around Vivek. So personally, I would have liked to have even more Vivek in the story, but it was very heartbreaking and beautiful, and I would highly recommend. Next up, a story that I didn't expect to be queer, but I was pleasantly surprised, and that is Great Circle. This is a historical fiction that is about flying, and we are following two siblings. I don't remember whether they're actually twins. One is a boy, one is a girl, and it's kind of like how they make their way in life, I think, and we're mainly following the girl as she grows up, and she really wants to fly planes in a time when that is not the normal accepted things to do for girls. And this spans a ton of time. I think it starts with the sinking of the Titanic, where I think they lose at least their mother, and then it goes like after the Second World War, basically. So we watch their lives develop, and yeah, this does take a little bit to get to the queer parts, but overall I thought this was a very, very great story. Not just a great circle. Then we have one book that doesn't quite fit in, but I still wanted to mention it because I loved it so much. It's also more of a thriller, so it also doesn't fit into this category perfectly, but it was the only thriller I had, so I threw it in here, and that is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. This is a bit of an odd choice because we're not actually following queer characters. We're following the two dads of two married gay men who have been killed. And it is about these fathers, how they hadn't accepted their sons because of their sexuality in their life, but now they are banding together to take revenge. And I love this book so much. I think if one person can pull this plot off, it is S.A. Cosby. This is a very, very violent book. These are violent men, but the discussion they have with each other as they are between the violent scenes, just impeccable. Read this. Then we have Butter Honey Pig Bread. I think again this might have been like Nigerian inspired, not quite sure, but I think that the mother that we follow in this story was from a Nigerian family, and then we also follow her twin daughters, and one of the daughters is gay, but there is a lot going on in this book. It follows these three women, how their lives are developing within the restraints that they had for their lives. There is a little bit of a mythological edge to this that I didn't particularly love in the end, but overall this was a very, very great story following kind of like these life trajectories and how like one event can have such a big impact as well. But maybe look up content warnings for this one. There is some heavy stuff in there. We also have like one queer character with a very kind of like sad story as well. Then we have the Safekeep. Now, the Safekeep is a very interesting one. I loved this book, but I also saw, like, right from the beginning what this book was actually about. And I think if you don't, then this can be kind of a frustrating read because the characters aren't actually that great. It's also not about the characters, but the characters are also a little bit sapphic. So if you want, like, unlikable characters, a very interesting thematic work, I would highly recommend The Safekeep. We are following a woman who lives in this house that actually belongs to her brother, but she has like very strong feelings that this is her house. But then one day the brother shows up with his current girlfriend and he says that the girlfriend is supposed to live in the house as well, as he's going on a business trip. And now these two women have to figure things out. I have two romance recommendations, and you might not be surprised that both of these are holiday romances, because that is honestly the only time I really want to read romance in the year. The first one is Under the Mistletoe with You. In this one we have a trans man, and this is also gay. One man, he has a bakery, but he wants to leave for the holidays. This other man is a famous actor and he just wants to get away for a couple of days. So he rented the first man's apartment, but then they get both snowed in at the apartment and they can't leave because there's so much snow. And yeah, it's kind of like annoyed people to lovers, I guess. And the next one is Cooking Up a Christmas Storm. This one has a bisexual main character. She just broke up with her girlfriend, and she pretends to be her girlfriend to get a job as a cook for this thing that is like really far out in the countryside. And while she is there, she meets someone new. Now, for the horror books, we have another one that I wasn't the biggest fan of, but a lot of people loved, and that is We Used to Live Here. This follows a couple, two women who live in this house, and while one of the women is still out and doing something, the other one is at home, and there is a family showing up on the doorstep, and they're like, hey, we used to live here. Like, the father says he grew up in that house and whether the family can see the house. And it turns like very weird. Like, for me personally, it wasn't the kind of weird that I wanted. The first half of the book was amazing, but then it just fell off for me. But a lot of people loved this one, so I still wanted to throw it in here. Then we have Camp Damascus. This is also an interesting book that was a little bit different than I thought. This is basically about a conversion therapy camp. However, we're not actually at that camp, it just exists in the background. And we are following this girl who is growing up in a very religious family, and she thinks that a demon is kind of haunting her. And there seems to be kind of a connection to certain feelings she has for this other girl. Then we have I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast is Me. This is a YA horror where we follow a young ballerina in Paris. She's black, and so she doesn't get the same chances as all the other ballerinas around her. But then one day she learns about this river of blood that is flowing under Paris, and she makes a deal with it, and shit goes down. Last but not least, I have two nonfiction recommendations that I wanted to share with you. The first one is Queer Love in Color. This is the perfect book if you are just disgusted with the world right now and you need something nice. This was such a good book for that. This has photography of queer couples as well as their like life stories from different parts of the world, different kinds of people, different kinds of stories, but all of them are couples of color as well. And it was just so hopeful and beautiful. And it was just the perfect kind of afternoon to start believing in humanity again, honestly. And last but not least, this one is maybe also a bit of an odd recommendation because it's not specifically about queerness, but I think it is still very fitting. That is Disability Intimacy. Now, not all the essays in this collection are about queerness, but I think you see a lot of overlap with the discussion of like disabled intimacy, what that means, how we can rephrase or reframe intimacy through a disabled lens, and also queerness. I think those go really well together, and some of these essays are about queer love or just about maybe love that is just different from what society says love should be like. So I think this still fits in quite nicely, even though it is a bit of a different topic. So I'm losing my voice, my camera is out of battery, but we have also talked about all the books that I wanted to mention. I'm sorry this was kind of a rough way through. If I have more detailed reviews or reading vlogs for these books, I will link them down below so you can go check them out, especially for some of the fantasy series that I mentioned as well at the beginning. I do have longer vlogs, and that might be interesting if you want to hear more of my thoughts. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave your recommendations down below because I can never have too many of those, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye!